think Chelsea was the hardest job in football. And not that I couldn't do it, but if you go in and you take a sledgehammer to a place and change it that quickly, sometimes there'll be collateral damage. I don't think the conditions were there for us to be successful. They were there to be really challenging. If you change 20, 30 players in 2 or 3 windows, the instability of that is hard to deal with. It's my job as a coach to improve what we've got. As it was, we took a different decision, which is another 7 players. And then you're like, okay, we've got to start again here.
Can I ask you about your relationship with the people that appointed you then, the owners?
I went from Brighton, which is Tony Blue, leadership structure, to me, and then owners and LA on a Zoom call at Chelsea. Pressure. That's the brutal nature of football. If they don't think you're the right person, you're out, and that hurt a little bit, I must admit.
A little bit?
A lot, of course.
Yeah. With total honesty, all your cards on the table, where do you now feel, if you went in again, you would operate differently? This episode is supported by Huel. Well, Graham, welcome to High Performance.
Thank you.
You said about your time at Chelsea, it didn't go as well as I'd have liked. I have to take responsibility for that, but I think I'm better for it. So tell us how that difficult professional moment has left you better.
I think it's like anything in life. You want to win and you want to succeed, but sometimes the real moments of growth or the bits of growth come from adversity, from setback, from struggle, and until you go through those things, you don't really know how you're going to handle them. You don't really know what you're going to get from them. You don't know the thoughts that you're going to have in your own head. You don't know whether you're going to be able to get through it, all that stuff. So just to have the experience and to feel the feelings and the emotions and the cognitive process that you have to go through to deal with it all is priceless. I spoke to somebody who was talking about having a similar experience in a different setting, and he looked back at the time. He said at the time it was awful, like it was proper challenging and horrible. He said, but when I look back on it, I said, if somebody offered me £100 million to take that experience away, I said I wouldn't do it, because it's just been so valuable for me just to have that struggle. And I think we're in a culture where winning is, if you succeed, winning is everything, and we're in a results business, so you've got to win, you've got to be successful, and of course that's obvious. But there's nobody, I don't think, that gets to any level of performance or achievement that doesn't suffer and doesn't feel like they've made mistakes or things haven't gone their way. And then it's about how you learn, I suppose. And the process for me has been, and this is the tricky bit, I think, it's been, okay, you want to take the bits that you want to learn from. You want to take responsibility. What could I do better? Where were the mistakes I made? And at the same time, you've got to put the context and look at the situation and go, okay, well, because you can beat yourself up too much, that's a mistake. And on the flip side, if you just go, it was crazy Chelsea, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
So you've got to try and find the right balance, I guess.
And look, I think it's the first time you've sat down on a podcast, right, to have this kind of conversation. And are you happy to delve into what happened at Chelsea? Because I think it is interesting, the specifics of some of that stuff, but also what you learned, but also how long it's taken you to learn that. The mental gymnastics that you've probably gone through over the last few months to go from a place where you spoke about bitterness and anger and frustration to being in a place where you can relate to someone who says, actually, I'm grateful for that experience.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, I don't say this lightly because I've lost both my parents, so I know about grieving, but it almost feels like a grieving process. There's an anger, there's a bitterness, there's a frustration, there's a sadness. And at that time, probably you're not able to process things in a good way because you've got these feelings that you have to deal with. I spent 12 years building up my career it didn't come for free. Family moved 3 countries from Sweden, 3 promotions, a major trophy in Sweden, a Europa League run that gets you into beating Galatasaray, beating PAOK, beating Hertha Berlin, then playing Arsenal, and then Swansea, and then struggling, and then Brighton, and building all that stuff up. And then it felt like at Chelsea, it was like, woof, this has gone quite quickly away from you. So you sort of have to deal with that frustration. You have to deal with that, anger. You sort of have to make sense of it, really. And like I said, it's easy to blame somebody else because that's how the brain works, the survival mechanism of our brain when we're under threat and when we're facing things we don't like to face. It's easy to point the finger somewhere else. So you have to really work hard psychologically, I think, and I've had some help from people as well, because I don't think you can do it on your own. But you have to try to work hard and try to allow yourself the time to work through the inevitable bitterness, anger, frustration, sadness, to come to some sense of it and to make it useful.
So it sounds in many ways like the grief curve, the Kubler-Ross curve of you start with anger and then it gets into denial before eventually that stage of acceptance becomes a place that we all try and strive for. Would you tell us a little bit about the different stages then? So what happened in that initial anger?
Yeah, it's anger, sadness, disappointment. Yeah, it's like, I think it's, again, referring back to the grief type of scenario, it's just when you think you're out of the woods, all of a sudden you'll have another setback or something. And especially in football, and the setback was always every Saturday when the teams are going and playing, and you get a reminder of stuff, and how do I deal with this? How do you get forward? Because there's always a game, there's always something to remind you. Chelsea are always playing, Brighton are playing, Brighton are doing well, Chelsea are struggling, and you're thinking, you're trying to work out how to be a human being again. You're adapting to not being in football. It's first time in 30 years that I've not had a game on the weekend to go to. How do I reconnect with my kids? Because my wife would say to me, you're here, but you're not here sometimes. Right. When I was a football manager. And I can, obviously, I think most people, you'll hear that often sometimes, I think, when people are in these positions, sometimes you forget the perspective, you forget to have that balance that is necessary for high performance. You end up getting into almost on a wheel, and it's harder to get off it and get that perspective that you need. So you almost have to learn to be a normal person. How do you deal with a weekend when you haven't got football? You can go shopping a couple of times, but then it starts to get a little bit, not sure about that. So yeah, and then eventually, I suppose, after lots of, like I said, just when you think you're clearing it, and then you set back, and then you clear it, and then you set back, and then eventually, I think you come to a point where, and I think you have to put strategies in place where, I just focus a lot on self-care. I went to the gym. I tried to sleep better. I tried to, diet was going to be better. Everything that I could do to make myself feel better, I tried to do. And then through conversations with friends, with my family, with professionals, that helped me through to almost make sense of it all, really. And in the end, you just have to be at peace with yourself and go, well, I did my best. I did my best. I gave everything to it. It didn't work. It didn't happen as I wanted it to happen. We still were unbeaten in the Champions League. There were still things that were good. I still had some unbelievable experiences there, and I'll be forever grateful for it. But at the same time, you have to deal with the disappointment.
So you're running late, no time for breakfast, and you're starving. Okay, we've all been there, whether it's racing to meetings, the school pickup or practice, whatever it is. But what if a nutritious meal could be ready in seconds? This podcast is sponsored by Huel. Huel, the world's leading complete nutrition brand. With over 400 million meals sold worldwide, Huel is trusted by people like you and me looking to fuel our days with convenient, complete nutrition. And you can try it for yourself now with this exclusive offer. 15% off Huel plus a free gift. All you have to do is use the code HP at Huel.com. And I look at this as the perfect answer to the most inconvenient meal of the day for me. So when I've got no time for prep, for cooking, and I don't want to grab an unsatisfying snack, I grab a Huel instead. So for 15% off plus a free gift for new customers, use the code HP at Huel.com. Fuel your day with Huel. It's very interesting listening to you talk, because when you talk about the 12-year journey, and this, by the way, doesn't even take into account the years as a footballer, that you had to understand the game and understand disappointment and frustration in that world as well, then becoming a manager. It almost feels like it was successful, it was methodical, it was thought about. You put everything that you had into your career, and then almost in the blink of an eye, a bit like going through a washing machine, you've suddenly gone into Chelsea, you've been spun around and you've come back out the other side. And it's it almost like a shock almost is the way that you're talking. Does that make sense?
A certain amount of it, yeah. I mean, it's because you have to understand, I suppose, the context of the timing at Chelsea. You know, a year before or something, they'd won the Champions League. There was that when you think about what they've achieved as a club over the last 25 years, for example, with the Abramovich era, you know, really successful football club. So, and at the time they'd gone through a massive transition. Big turnover of players. The start point for when I went in there, you know, they just spent 300 million in the window. Thomas was the manager. He left after the window. They'd lost Rudiger, lost Christensen, lost Alonso. Chelsea as a team built on, you know, defensive stability. All of a sudden, those key ones had gone, replacing them with Koulibaly and different players that need time to settle in. And the new owners come in, want to change the dynamic at Chelsea behind the scenes. A lot of key people left behind the scenes in terms of leadership at the club, in terms of medical team, etc., etc. And then all of a sudden you're in this washing machine, I explain, feeling where we had 14 matches in 6 weeks was the start point. Champions League, Premier League, Champions League, Premier League, which is, you know, an overload situation for me because that's the next step. And I think looking back, one of the mistakes would be, well, if you're going to give yourself that step up, give yourself a chance to plan, to reflect, to go into a situation with some time to train, with some time to practice.
So why didn't you, when the offer came, say, actually, do you know what, I've spent 12 years trying to get to this point. I'm not going to get a transfer window. There is new ownership. You have just fired a really popular manager.
Yeah.
You have just lost a load of experienced footballers. Maybe yes, one day, but not now.
Yeah, good question. And I've asked that question a lot.
Have you?
Yeah, of course. But I think you can only go off the conversations I had with the owners. It happened quite quickly. Yeah. So maybe there's a mistake in terms of, you know, not giving it the proper thought. At the end of the day, it's still Chelsea Football Club. Yeah. It's still how they were talking about was, and I think you're seeing it now to a certain extent, you know, young players, talented players, but, you know, competing at the top of the game, having the funds to compete at the top of the game, to win trophies, all that stuff. That spoke about culture, spoke about environment, spoke about bringing a lot of what I did at Brighton to Chelsea, but at a higher level. So, and changing culture from an owner. And again, I think I underestimated, okay, culture, just because the owner goes, there's still a culture around the expectation of Chelsea. Yep. You know, what's happened for 25 years is, if results haven't gone very well in a relatively short period of time, pressure's built pretty quickly. And the owners press the button and the manager's been ejected out. That's essentially what has happened at Chelsea for 25 years. And they've won as well. So just because the owner's gone, there's still a cultural expectation of how that was. And again, at the time, we weren't winning as much as we should have done, or Chelsea expect. And then the obvious answer is, well, it's the coach isn't good enough. The coach isn't up to it. Yeah. And then that's a frustrating bit, because I'm going, well, I've spent 12 years building myself as a career, and I think I am a competent coach. Chelsea wasn't the first opportunity I had. I turned other ones down before I went there. So, but pretty quickly, you're written off quite quickly.
How quickly do you think you were?
Fairly quickly, if I'm being honest. But again, I understand why, because I think the context was Chelsea aren't winning. It must be the coach.
But you did start winning. I mean, you had a great start.
Yeah, good job. Otherwise, it'd have lasted even shorter.
So when do you? I think you spoke at one point about it felt like the walls were closing in. It felt like a crisis, right?
Well, what it was just that when you're going through all that, as the head coach, what's happening behind the scenes. Yeah. So the challenge is, how do you communicate this? How do you stay logical? How do you try to explain the challenges that you have without it sounding like it's excuses and you're weak? You know, and that's the reality. I said at the time, I think Chelsea was the hardest job in football. It's not that I couldn't do it, but I think it was at that time. And obviously, it's easy for me to say that, and it's a bit of a cheap thing to say because I don't know all the context. I'm not for 1 second thinking that. But the feeling I had with all the history of Chelsea, with all that was going on in terms of the change, with the change, if you change 20, 30 players in 2 or 3 windows, the instability of that is hard to deal with.
And then you've explain that for us, for people that don't understand. Like, most people will go, 20, 30 world-class players came in. Wonderful. You've got amazing talents at your disposal, but yet you're saying it's like so difficult to deal with. What are the specifics of why that's so hard?
Well, you have to go back from before I got there. You know, Thomas is obviously he's a fantastic football coach, but they'd lost to Arsenal in pre-season, they'd lost to Leeds, they'd lost to Southampton, they lost to Zagreb. So the team was it was in a moment of growing. I think probably 6 players had come in, 6 players had left. You know, already there's a turnover of players. You just need to stabilise a little bit. And then we went into the 14 matches in 6 weeks prior to a World Cup, which is pretty unique. We lost. Well, Kante was already injured before we were there. Reece got injured. Chile got injured. And all of a sudden, the wing backs at Chelsea, which had been quite a big part of their attacking game, they'd gone. We lost Fofana, who came in as a replacement for the ones that you lost, and all of a sudden things were just being a little bit unstable. And then the January was about, okay, the owners felt that they wanted to invest again in the team, and you know, big amounts. And I think as a coach and someone that's been in football a long time, I'm thinking in January to do that, it's not as straightforward that they're going to come in and hit the ground running and get success. Because you're buying young players, you're buying players from outside the Premier League, maybe players that are coming on a mid-season break, so they need to get up to speed. The likes of Mudryk, the likes of Fernandes, the likes of Badiashile, these are young guys that haven't been successful in the Premier League. If you're buying Declan Rice and Harry Kane, I think you've got less argument because everyone knows what they do. They're Premier League ready and they can go into the team and you can win. But the problem when you're spending that sort of money, especially at Chelsea, that there's a demand that they have to win. You have to win at Chelsea. There's not too much time to develop and bed people in because there's emotion that's involved and there's an expectation from the fans that we have to win. And then when you don't win, you've got pain and you're frustrated as a supporter. Yeah. What the hell's, what's going on with my club here? We've got all this money, we've got these players. But my point to the owners as well was, if you're going to sign these players, you might need to move some out as well, because otherwise if you've got 30, only 11 play. So you've got 20 players that aren't happy, and that in a team is difficult, because you want competition, you want healthy competition, but you don't want too many people thinking, I'm not even getting a shirt here, I'm not even stripping because I'm not even in the 18. So that was a particular challenge, and sometimes football always looks for a recruitment answer as a solution. But actually, it takes time as well. It takes time for people to, okay, this partnership and this settled team is what we're all sort of striving for. You see now teams suffering, they have some injuries, have some problems. All of a sudden, it doesn't look so easy for them anymore. So that's my explanation, I suppose, as how 30 players, and when it happens so quickly, people are looking around going, "Oh, you're not responsible for this." Which is good, because they know, okay, you're not responsible for this. Yep. But on the flip side, you're not responsible for this. So who is?
Mm. And how does that impact the way they?
Well, I think from a leadership perspective, it's harder to get. You need some, I suppose, authority has to come from a place of a good place, not because you're a title, but so there's this is all making a bit of sense. Whereas at the time, the noise around Chelsea at that time is spend 300 million in a January window. The media go, boof, pressure, team, pressure, coach, you got to win. And then the flip side to it all is we'd had these injuries, and obviously injuries is a bit of a challenge for everybody. The challenge with, I think, as a manager these days is you can have players injured, but then once they're back fit, they're not back fit. They're not back fit to play 3 games a week. So we had an instance like, Reece James, for example. He had a long challenge with injury when we were there, and then we got him back fit, but he wasn't fit to play in the first week 3 games. It's not Saturday, Wednesday in the Champions League, Dortmund, Southampton on the Saturday. But if you leave him out on the Saturday, all of a sudden, you're rotating your team. You don't know your best 11. What's all that sort of that type of questioning. But actually, you're just trying to periodise the players, trying to get them through, so that safely you've got a squad that you can use. It sounds like I'm
no, you're not.
100 of excuses here, but and these are all the challenges at the highest level. Everybody has to do it. So, I'm not complaining about it. I'm just trying to put a context of.
And I think it
what
was a unique situation you walked into.
I think so.
There's truth in that.
And I have to take my responsibility because no one was forcing me to go there. I think you look at Chelsea now; they're in a better situation, and it's an exciting young squad they've got. But at the same time, I have to think that if you go in and you take a sledgehammer to a place and change it that quickly, sometimes there'll be collateral damage. And I think I was a bit of collateral damage, and then I have to look at myself and could I have done anything? What could I have done better, and how could I have seen things better or acted differently? Yeah, I mean.
Can I ask you about your relationship with the people that appointed you then, the owners? Like, what was it like when they first approached you for the role, and how did the relationship change during the period you were there?
I'd like to think I've still got a decent relationship with them. They're smart guys. They're ambitious. They want the right thing for Chelsea. So I don't think for one second they're doing anything because they want to ruin my football career. It's just football happens and these things happen. Yeah. Like I said, it's a combination of a lot of noise around, and they sometimes have to act. They were new to it all. I can only imagine. But when I spoke with Tony Bloom, he's a chairman of 10 years, and he would say, I look back at the start of my time, I made lots of mistakes, like we all do when we're starting out doing something. You make mistakes, you're learning. It's not until you get under the bonnet of a football club that you realise, okay, what do I need to do here? And you go down one strategy, you go down one way, and then all of a sudden that doesn't feel right, and you go down another way, and you try and have to, work it out. So, like I said, the initial conversation was about building a culture, building an environment, creating pathways for younger players through the academy, because in the past Chelsea had sold a lot of players on from the academy, and they wanted to use them in the first team, to have 16 players, 16 top players competing on the pitch, supplemented with young players, so that there's a possibility to sell, but at the same time compete and win. So it all sounded really positive, and it sort of made sense. And I think because because their ambition was so strong, they wanted to make some decisions themselves around recruitment. And as a head coach, I never got to that. I didn't get to Chelsea by being the guy that said I want to be in control of everything, I want to decide everything. But at the end of the day, you're the owner, you're the guy that's responsible for the football club. If you want to do this, then my job is to support it. So I tried, like I said, I tried to do that with the owners, had the conversation around, look, if you do spend this money, you might have to overpay. There's no guarantees it's going to improve because of the profile of the players you're going to buy, and you might have to get some players out. They didn't do that, and they did what they did, and the consequences are we didn't win enough. And once you don't win enough, they have to make a decision. I've always said as a head coach, if the owners think that the problem is you, the results aren't good enough, and the solution is you need to change the head coach, then that's their prerogative, and you have to accept that.
But it sounds like when we were lucky enough to speak to Paul Barber, he recounted the first meeting he had with you at a service station before they appointed you as Brighton head coach. And he said it was a fascinating experience because he felt that you were interviewing him, not the other way round, that you came in with a really clear idea of how you wanted to run the squad, how you wanted to develop it, the support you needed. And they committed to a 3-year plan that they knew the change of style from Chris Hughton to you was going to take time to embed.
Yep.
I'm interested in, did you adopt the same approach when you went in with the Chelsea owners of being really clear about what your standards were and what support you needed?
Well, yeah, I mean, I tried to, but I suppose not well enough. It's just the reality, because and the situation was slightly different. Again, I went into Brighton. You've got a bit of time to have that thought, that conversation, that planning, that reflection. Okay, what do we need? How can we implement the changes you need to get? And then how do you go about getting the results, enough results that keeps the wolf from the door, that keeps you, moving forward? Because in the end, if you don't get the results, if you don't get results quick enough or enough, there's always going to be pressure, and there's higher pressure at the bigger clubs, and certainly at Chelsea, I think, but just because of historically how they've been, it's one of the toughest situations in terms of how that affects things, I would say. So, yeah, we managed to navigate it well at Brighton, but not so well at Chelsea, and things changed that quick. Like I said, things changed that quickly, and it was such a unique situation in terms of that many games so quickly. I mean, we only lost 3 games in the Premier League in the first block of games, 14 games. We lost 3 games, and those games we lost were 1-0 at home to Arsenal, who were the best team in the league at the time. We lost badly once we beat Zagreb. I think. No, we beat Red Bull Salzburg, to qualify for the knockouts of the Champions League. And we played Brighton on the Saturday. We had a bad game there. We made a mistake tactically and didn't go about it well, and we lost. So that was our second defeat in the Premier League. And then we lost to Newcastle on the last day, 1-0 at St James's Park. And it's 5:30 kickoff. It was like the Wild West. Eddie was doing brilliant at Newcastle. So it was almost like but the perception was it's absolutely the end of the world. And we weren't playing that well, in fairness. We weren't playing that well. But results-wise, we were like, okay, if you get Reece back, if you get Chile back, if you get Fofana back, if you get Kante back, if you get Kepa back, all of a sudden things could maybe stabilise. And it's my job as a coach to improve what we've got. As it was, we took a different decision, which is another 7 players. And then you're like, okay, we've got to start again here. The World Cup preparation time that you think you've got, all our players are on the World Cup or they're coming back from injury, so you haven't got that preparation time. So there's lots of things that just, and you look at it and go, yeah, was it fate? Is it just meant to be? Sometimes you need a cup run to get you through something. We draw Man City away in the FA Cup and Man City away in the League Cup. It's like, okay, maybe this is what it is, and it just wasn't meant to be.
One of Sir Alex Ferguson's famous bits of advice he gives to young managers is, don't choose the club, choose the chairman.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to any coaches out here about choosing the right chairman then? What are the qualities that you feel a head coach would need from them?
Yeah, and I think the reflective piece would be, because anybody can say anything in an interview situation, in a room, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, but until you've got evidence of how they're going to act and what they're going to do, I'd be careful. Like I said, Tony Bloom, you've got 10 years of experience. You've got 10 years of what he actually did when things got tough. What he actually did when things happened. How did he act? So you've got that. When I went to Swansea, Hugh Jenkins, you've got experience and evidence of how he is and what he does. So again, in defence of the owners at Chelsea, they were new to it. So whilst they spoke about things, we still didn't know what would happen if you haven't won in a bit. What would happen if during this transition period results aren't what we want? How does that look? What does the pressure do? What sort of decisions will you make?
And did you speak to him about those kind of questions?
Well, yes, but I don't think anybody's able to really answer it until you've been through it. You can say, Todd Boehly had one coach, I think, in his 10 years at the Dodgers. Right. So the evidence was there that he wanted stability.
Who were you able to go to for advice in this period?
Well, that was the thing. Like during we had a World Cup break, which ended up almost being me sort of trying to help the staff understand what was happening, because the staff some key people had left. People had been in the club for 15 years. So all of a sudden they're thinking, well, what's going on here? Morale's quite low. How can we make the situation better?
So what did you do?
So we used that camp really as a way of speaking as a group of staff, and speaking to all the guys that are around the first team, like almost a development day. Coordinate it with Neil Bath and some of the guys there to sort of say, well, okay, what's important to us? How do we want to be in this environment? What's the expectations going forward? How can we make people understand that they're part of it? That we want to make them feel supported. We want to make them feel appreciated. Try to communicate where we are in this journey. Because if everyone's totally negative all the time, internally you've got to look and say, but you've got to try and almost give some logical reason as to what is happening. You've got to try and put the context in context and say, yeah, it's not because we're all bad and because everything's rubbish. It's because things are happening that are making it challenging, and we have to together get through this. And it went really well. Like, I think the support I've always had from the guys at Cobham, the staff there was really good. I had good relationships with pretty much everybody. I never felt at any point that we'd lost the dressing room or we'd lost Cobham as a group of staff. I think everybody knew how tough it was, and everyone was trying to navigate their way through it. But I think that wasn't probably my job at that point. I think that's where you need a sport director. That's probably where you need somebody above you, because I went from Brighton, which is Tony Bloom, Paul Barber, Dan Ashworth / David Weir, leadership structure, to me, and then owners and LA on a Zoom call at Chelsea, going through all this stuff that's happening. Yeah. And I think, as I said, football fans don't want to hear about, from a head coach, when the result hasn't gone well, about this context and this situation and all that's happening here, because they're, shut up, we just drew with Brentford, or we've just lost them in Arsenal. We don't want to hear of this.
But that's why I think this is such a vital and actually powerful conversation, because as time has passed by and the football fans' emotion, right, of what did we win or lose last weekend has subsided, because we're now talking about something, 18 months ago. I feel like for you to put it in context is so valuable, because it almost sounds like quite a lonely experience, actually, because you're trying to deal with problems you've never dealt with in your entire management career. You've got no one above you who's dealt with these problems that you can go to. You've got staff below looking at you saying, Graham, what's going on here? Is loneliness the right word to use?
Yeah, yeah, because no one else can go through that, and you're in your own thoughts. And I think sometimes a lot more experienced managers than me will say it can be a lonely job at times, and that's why we do it. There's an intellectual challenge and an emotional challenge that is something that you have to face up to and do. It was like I said, it was frustrating, because on one level you go, nobody seems to be getting this, and it's like the easy thing is, Potter's not up to it. He's not up to it, and that's let's just write it off because we're not winning enough. Okay, fair enough. And like I said, I wasn't perfect, so they're not 100% wrong with that, because clearly no one's perfect, and if you're not winning football matches, there's always something you can do better. But nevertheless, it was you have to deal with that. Like, try and hold it together. I think you're right. It's everyone's looking at you, and then you've got the media, which is, when I'm at Brighton doing well, I'm this emotionally intelligent, calm, intelligent guy. Yeah. And when I'm losing at Chelsea, I need to be nastier and angrier. So and then you're not a Chelsea manager. The personality. They make it about a personality, about whatever. Are you tough enough? It's like, well, I don't know how about you, but if you go 12 years as a football manager, you go from the 4th tier in Swedish football to the last 8 in Champions League, and you think that comes for nothing, and that just happens. That journey, I don't think there's too many coaches in the world that have done that type of journey. So that doesn't happen because haven't got these whatever it is they're looking for, resilience or toughness or ruthlessness or whatever else. You have to make those decisions, otherwise you're not going to gain that way. Yeah. But when you're going through all this stuff, my decision was I want to remain calm. I want to be consistent. I want to be me. That's who I am. As soon as I start to be something else, I think I'm letting Chelsea down at that point. Yeah. Now, if you like I said, if you think that we've lost games, so I'm the problem, no, I accept it. Fair enough.
I'm going to tell you a secret that I've noticed about high performers. They are laser focused on the power of the gut. You heard me right, the gut. Because the gut and overall health are intrinsically linked. And that's why so many high performers take a probiotic. And one which keeps on being discussed is this, Biotic by Heights. I've been taking it for over a year now, and it is so good. It's one of only 3 products in Europe that's Informed Sports certified. That means it's taken by Olympians, Premier League footballers, Guinness World Record holders, international rugby players. Quite simply, this is gut health for champions. So master your microbiome and treat yourself to a high-performing gut for a high-performance lifestyle with 20% off your first month. Just go to heights.com/HP or enter the code HP20 at checkout to get 20% off and start seeing the difference that Heights could make to your health.
Can I show you these 2 pictures, Graham? Because they say pictures paint 1,000 words. And there's 2 pictures here that I want to just show you. So this was your first game in charge there at Chelsea.
Yeah.
And then this was your final game.
Yeah. The beard's got a bit longer, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm interested in the impact of this period on your own mental health, because Those two pictures look like a guy there that is going under an awful lot of the pressure and the stresses that you describe. And I'm wondering, how did you protect your own mental health to still be you?
How? Well, I think I had to, like I said, I spoke to a lot of people. I spoke to my friends, my family. I've always been working with someone from a psychological perspective to talk through. I think we all face the challenge of comparing ourselves to other people. You sometimes, your ego gets linked to success. So you have to work really hard to go, okay, ultimately, if we don't win, you fail.
Yeah.
But I think you've got to work hard to go, yeah, but can you focus on the things that you can control? Can you focus on your behaviours, on how you act? Because we're playing a game that you can't control. As much as coaches think that they can, the beauty of the game is you can't. Like, that's why we play it and that's why we love it. So, but nevertheless, you have to work on your own mindset or your own brain to go, am I doing the things that I can control as well as I can? And, and then when I reflect back, I go, okay, was I exercising enough? Was I sleeping well enough? Was I eating well enough? Was I doing all the things that I can do myself to protect me from the noise that's coming at you all the time? The media, it's a game. It's a game off the pitch and it's a game on the pitch. Every time there's probably two clubs outside the top six that are failing because they're not in the top six. Jabbing you. Pressure. And then the flip side is they'll go, oh, how are you doing? And it's like, well, you're not really. I don't want you to be bothered about it. It's not your job is to ask you questions and understand your job, but don't come and ask me about my mental health now.
Yeah.
My mental health is my mental health. I think I spoke about it once, and maybe I shouldn't have done, but it was to sort of say, look, everyone. It's one of those topics where, when you talk about challenges to your mental health, it's not like you're in bed and you can't get out. It's some days you have good days where physically you feel strong, and some days you're going, okay, I need to think about this. I need to understand that. This is challenging at the moment, and maybe my confidence isn't as high as it can be, and you have to sort of regulate yourself. But that's been the case all my life. The inner voice, the imposter syndrome, all of these concepts that people talk about, they're all there in all of us, I think. But at different stages, they'll hit you more, and then that's where you've got to do your work. But the point is, whenever you speak about something like mental health, there's such a stigma, because on the flip side of it is, really bad stuff, losing lives, can't get out, hospitalised, etc. But there'll also be days where you're just not having a very good day. And it's still mental health, but it's just not the same. It's on a different
Why
level of spectrum.
Why do you have a sense that you shouldn't have mentioned it? I think it's the most powerful thing to talk about.
Yeah, I do, but I still think there's a feeling that if you do, there's a weakness to it. There still is, because you don't want to, the cultural alpha male position of a coach is you've got to be strong, all-knowing, thick-skinned, don't care about anybody, that type of stuff. Reality is we're human beings, and whilst we can say this and we can give us this perspective that we don't care about anything, we're human beings. We're programmed to be socially connected. We're programmed to want people to like us in some way. Sure. But at the same time, you've got to balance that with a professional job that you have to do and see it for what it is.
I'm interested and disappointed, actually, just briefly, that you still feel that we're in that world, because maybe we see it differently because of the kind of conversations we have on this show. We've sat down with Toto Wolff and spoken about his pretty serious mental health challenges that he's carried all of his life. We've spoken with some of the best known sports people in the country, sitting in the chair you're sitting in now, who finally feel they live in a world where they can open up, and that vulnerability really helps other people.
Yep.
So it is a shame that after your experience in football, you still feel like there's a long way to go in terms of the perception of people that talk about the challenges with their mental health.
And I think we've taken steps, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think the conversations that you have and the conversation that we have are useful. I think there's still a, and it's not like, we should be soft, everything's difficult. It's a challenging conversation, and it's a challenging subject. But I think to be okay to be not okay is fine. To understand that you can perform at a really high level, but maybe not be 100% physically and mentally is actually all right. Lots of people do it, and this notion that we're striving to be this perfect specimen, this perfect thing. It's like I'm not sure whether that's so healthy if we want to create high performing people. High performing people are still imperfect.
But don't we need to also create an environment where we allow high performing people to be as high performance as possible, right? And I think one of the big things is the media narrative, which then informs fan behaviour, right? So there's a moment where you're getting death threats through the post. You're having to mention your mental health in press conferences, which in some ways feels like you've felt the need to finally do that just to try and quieten the noise or try and calm some of that criticism, I think. But so much of this is driven by conversations that are being had around a game of 22 men kicking a ball into the back of the net. That's the reality of this. And yet it ends up with death threats being sent. So I don't think we can speak to you today without having a conversation about the media narrative around the game and the true human cost of that.
Yeah. But I think I think supporters want that to a certain extent. There's like I said, there's emotion, there's passion around the game. So, and when people aren't getting the results they want, they feel hurt, they feel anger. We see it all the time. We can have these nice conversations in here, but the reality on the coalface on a Saturday afternoon, if you're 3-0 down at home, is you get an abuse, and that's how it is. And then you might get abuse online, and you might get abuse in other ways through the street. And I'm not complaining about it. I'm not sitting here, pity me, but that's just the reality of it. And you have to accept it to a certain extent. Deal with it. I think when it affects your family, it becomes a bit more challenging because you're like, well, they didn't really ask to be this, but it is part of. Like I said, I'm not complaining about it. It's just.
But it does have an impact on how well you can do your job, right? Because are you second guessing stuff, doubting your decisions?
Not really, because I think everyone has the same challenges. What you hope for is that you're in a good club with good leadership, and that's all you ask for as a coach. Yeah. And I think what I did, I walked into Chelsea and I don't think the conditions were there for us to be successful. They were there to be really, really challenging. How do you communicate those challenges? How do you keep the thing moving? How do you build trust with people? Because fans expecting this, fans expecting that. And then if it doesn't go well, you just know that that's how it is. And then you have to just, okay, what am I listening to here? Because you can get criticism everywhere, but you have to be really selective of who you listen to and who you block out and who you just don't care. Because some will have criticism and it'll be fair. And some will be educated, and some will be useful, and some of it will be uneducated, not balanced, and totally useless. And after the event, everyone's a genius. Should have done this. Should have done that. Should have done this. Should have done that. Yeah, and because you know that the worst thing you can be, and I think, is to think that you know everything. There's always. But then the flip side to that is there's always a bit of doubt, and there's always you could have done something else. You could have done something else. So again, it's been able to manage all that in your own brain, and I think that's why my focus has been a lot on self-care and making sure that I'm the best version of myself, because in the end that's all you've got. Really, you've got to really that how you think and how you can deal with the situation internally is probably your biggest advantage, is your biggest asset.
Yeah. And when I think, like when we were doing the research to prepare for this, Graham, there was 3 incidents, almost like thunderbolts in your life, that to me demonstrated toughness. There was the occasion when you were, when York City announced that you were being released on the day of your wedding. There was the occasion where you lost both your parents in a short space of time when you were at Brighton. And then there was the Chelsea experience when it came towards the end. And I'm interested in, you survived that and you were still able to perform. What advice would you give to anyone listening to this that can see somebody going through a tough time, and you've been through some of the toughest, that how you can help people and create that environment where people can still give the best but feel heard and understood and belonged?
Yeah, and I think as a leader, you've got to set the example. So I think you've got to make sure that you're creating those conditions where people can feel like they don't. It's easy. We're so easy, especially in football and sport, to zoom into the individual, to zoom into the, he's done this wrong or that, and we expect everybody to be perfect. And it's a balancing act because you need to drive standards. You need to have people to be accountable. You want to push boundaries, but you need to just balance it off with. But it's impossible to be perfect. And how can you create an environment where people feel connected, people feel that they're improving, people feel like there's an element of autonomy there.
So can you tell us how you created that, whether that was at Östersund or Brighton?
Well, again, the start point would be me as a leader. This is what I'm about. This is what I believe in. This is how I think it's going to go. So then automatically people can start to hold you accountable because you've just said, this is how I want to act. This is how I want to be. So I want to be honest. I want to give you. I want to give you feedback. I want to be there to support you and challenge you and help you. This is my job. There's enough going on in the world as a football team. There's enough external stuff coming at you for me to make it worse for you as well. I'm here as part of this team to help and support. Part of that will be sometimes I need to kick your ass and sometimes I need to give you a full-eye conversation and this isn't good enough and you need to do better, because that's me honestly giving you help and feedback. But I think that's the start point. And then it's like, okay, well, how do you create a culture where the people in the room, the people think, okay, this is our culture. This is what the easy bit is to come down. These are my rules. Here you go. If you don't do this, this is the punishment. I think it's about, well, how do we want to be? What's our vision? What's our goals here? How do we want to act? And then almost as a coach, you're just there, observing it. When somebody steps out of line, then it's relatively easy to do something. It's relatively easy to help the group, because in the end, that's your job. Yeah. Your job is to protect the team, protect the group, create boundaries that are clear enough so the individuals can be free to be themselves, but not at the expense of the team.
Yeah.
So can you give us an example then of what like a boundary would be that the players would help you co-create?
Well, it'd be things like, as a basic one would be around lateness, for example. Okay. Timekeeping, for example. And I think, as I said, sometimes people just in life make mistakes. And it's timekeeping, it's how they act in training. These are young men that are 20-something years old. It's not in their nature to think about the team. They're thinking about themselves. The higher you go, the evidence would suggest everybody becomes a bit more selfish. Everybody becomes a bit more driven by their own situation. So there's all sorts of imperfect behaviour going on. And rather than get upset by it, and rather than think, like he's letting this down, and if they make mistakes, it's like, okay, but how can we learn as a group and how can we learn as a team? Because the punishment's the easy bit. It's like, yeah, but do you understand what's happening here? Can you help people understand what the impact on you constantly being late is? How do these guys feel, for example? What's going on in your world, and why are you being this? What's actually happening? So try to understand why the mistake is happening, and try to use it as a way for everybody to learn and the individual to learn. Like I said, as a coach, I think there's always a point where you've got to go, no, enough's enough. I've got to protect the team here. But in the meantime, mistakes are all right. I think mistakes are fine. They're inevitable. Football's a mistakes game.
So Roy Keane recently came out with a quote in the light of Erik ten Hag sacking, where he said, in good teams, the leader holds the players to account. In great teams, the players hold each other to account. So I get that you set the tone initially of agreeing these standards and getting the players to buy into it. How do you then create the environment where players do start to, when somebody's late, they challenge them rather than wait for you to do it?
But I think the process of top-down guiding it rather than you top-down controlling it. So you're top-down guiding a sort of a bottom-up process, if you like. Okay. So you're involving the people here so they feel like, okay, like there's some responsibility passed. We've all agreed it. And sometimes they'll need help from me to enforce something. But in the end, it's part of they've contributed to this decision. They've contributed to how we're going to be and how we're going to act. And then it's about identifying the characters, and then it's about, using recruitment and understanding from a recruitment perspective. Can you identify players that can help with that? Because, we think we can magic this thing, but sometimes you need to sign an Adam Lallana, or you need to sign a Danny Welbeck, or you need to sign a Pascal Gross, or you need to understand the role that these guys have in a team. Because again, back to a team, we make the mistake of thinking the start point of everybody is their own self. And we're a very individual society anyway, and we're getting more and more that way. And it's harder for us to suppress uncomfortable thoughts and being uncomfortable because we're switched on all the time to devices, and the discomfort goes away. So the downside to that is that no one's focus is on the team, but there'll be players that you can develop that will naturally take that stance. And if you can create that hierarchy within a group, because it's about that. Yes, you're the coach here, but you'll need your captain, and you need to make sure that your captain is the one that is enforcing all the stuff that you just talked about. If the captain is going against what you're saying, you've got problems. So the captain needs to be either the best player or the one that's acting well. He's training hard every day. Lewis Dunk was brilliant at that. He was the best player on the pitch in training. Every pass, every action was top. He wasn't perfect, but that was his start point. And then you've got the likes of, like I said, Adam Lallana. As a coach, I can talk about what you need to do to win football matches in the Premier League, but Adam Lallana's won the Premier League and won the Champions League, and so has Danny Welbeck. So if I can involve them and get them to buy in, and they can speak, and it's almost more powerful to come from Danny Welbeck than it is to come from me, because he's been at Man United and he's won the Premier League. He's played for England. So it's like, but I think you need to create that. I think creating a hierarchy and having that support within your playing group and facilitating it and allowing them to speak, I think it's huge. Because you're right, I think you want to go from a top-down guided team that's been led by you to a self-performing team that directs itself, that calls each other out. And when we left Brighton was like the best environment. Those players, that environment was top. So it doesn't surprise me that they were fourth in the table when we left. Yeah. They'd sold £150 million worth of players. It kept improving. That's because the core of the group, the environment, how they acted, how they trained, was absolutely top.
Can you give us an example, so for anyone outside of your world, of how they maintain those standards?
Well, I think it's habits. They know how. They know that it's the little bits that you do every single day. That's just a bit to try your best every single day to try to improve. Because in the end, as a football team, you want to try and say, okay, if we want to improve football, we have to play football at 100%, and we need to try our very best. You need everybody fighting against each other in a good way, in a competitive way, because that pushes everybody, that gets the improvement. And then, so that competition has to be there. That healthy competition has to be there. You have to try and go, okay, how do we understand, how can we get players that can go, yes, I'm focused on myself and my number one aim is me, but I'm starting to understand and I'm starting to have empathy with my teammates who are similar to me but different, and we're now fighting for more than just the 3 points. We're more than just it's a transactional relationship. I pay you money, you pay football for me. Can you get them to align with the values of the club? Can you get them to align with the values of what we want to do as a team?
And how do you do that?
Well, firstly, you have to be clear of what the team and the organisation want to do,
right? And
then you have to communicate. This is what we're about. This is who we are. At Brighton, we went from fourth bottom in the Premier League, playing a certain style that kept Brighton in the Premier League, which was great. But we had to change it, and our narrative was we want to be a more possession-based team. We want to be a more attacking team. We need to develop players. We need to use younger players. We're going to use players from a different market. So we have to understand that it's going to be a multinational group where self-awareness and empathy are going to be really, really important for us, because we need to not be triggered by each other because we don't understand each other, because it's tough enough in this league as it is. So we need to focus on all these things. This has to be our bit. And then once you can communicate that clearly, once then okay, these are the type of people that we need. These are the attributes we need as a footballer. These are the skills we need. This is the knowledge we need. And also then this is the type of person we need. This is the attitude we need. This is the thinking we need. And where are we in that continuum? Because in any group, there's sometimes you've got high talent and sometimes you've got high attitude psychology. And if you're in a really high talented bit, maybe you need some good characters and good people there to help everything. And if you recognise, actually, the group's not that stable personality-wise, the attitude's not quite, the personality, the character is not quite stable, maybe we don't need to take a chance on this, another one that needs support in that. So as soon as you're sort of clear with, your needs of who's coming in, what type of attributes you've got, then you need to know, okay, well, when they come in, how can we support them? Because no one's perfect. There's no football player that's going to come in and solve all your problems. You have to support them. You have to understand, well, what resources do we have to put? Is it training? Is it attitude? Is it psychology? Is it, what support mechanisms do we have to put in? What's their training going to look like? What type of day-to-day work do they need to be the best version of themselves? Because hopefully on the personal level, if you've communicated to them when they're coming in, okay, this is what you bring to this team. These are your strengths. These are your characteristics. We want to make you better by being you, the best version of yourself. And by the way, it lines with what we want to do as well, because we want to be, competing in Europe. We want to be a top 10 Premier League club. We can see your ambition. We can see what you want to do. We want to do the same, and you're going to help us get there, etc., etc. Then I think you end up going, okay, well, it's not a transactional relationship anymore.
Yeah.
We're fighting for more than just 3 points. We're fighting more we're fighting for our identities, our strengths, our attributes, and we're starting to understand each other on a human level, and we've got empathy for each other because, well, I thought you were just a centre midfielder from Ecuador, but now I realise that you're centre midfielder from Ecuador, and you've got 9 brothers and sisters, and you've got to help them, and you've got to realise that there's a pressure on you for that, and then actually, yeah, you've just lost your parents, and you've had to deal with that, and all of a sudden, like, even though they're millionaires and even though they're at the highest level, they're still going, okay, I've got a bit more understanding of who my teammates are now, and there's less chance that they're going to be triggered for stuff that is not football. It's hard enough as it is. If you're not together and if you're not fighting for each other, good luck.
See, I remember when you lost your job at Chelsea, I immediately looked at the results and was like, well, Graham's just won 3 of the last 5 and he's in a Champions League match against Real Madrid. You know, he's done brilliantly in the Champions League. Now I kind of look back and think, well, I'm falling into the same old trap there, right, of basing my opinion of your time at Chelsea on results. So with everything you've just told us, do you think the stuff that we didn't see, all of that management behind the scenes was finally coming together? Or do you feel actually maybe it was just never going to work?
I don't know is the obvious answer. I don't know. Like I said, I don't think you can... We lost Aston Villa. That was the game we lost. It was the final game. And my assistant's friends with Unai, and Unai was like, "You played well, like pushed us back, and you didn't deserve to lose." But I think by that point, the owners, the pressure was that much, and the noise was that strong that they felt that they had to do something. I don't think you can beat Borussia Dortmund over 2 games in the Champions League if you haven't got people fighting for you. And it's just to compete in the Premier League and the Champions League. Our results in the Premier League weren't good enough, so I accept that. We went through a process where you'd like to think that you get, but in the end, sometimes it's a results business, and people don't care about this context that we're speaking about now. And I understand that. I'm not complaining about it. I'm trying to attempt to try to put some context on it and tell us my side of the story, and maybe, there'll be other things that I've missed out. And like I said, I'm saying 100%, I'm not perfect. So clearly I've made mistakes, and clearly I could have done better. But I think the one thing I've always thought about was, if it was really me and it was really like, I've got big problems. If I'm sitting here now and after I left Chelsea's results just skyrocketed through the table, I'm thinking, hang on a minute, there's something here. But, Frank goes in and it's not easy. You can see that. Mauricio had all of the back in the pre-season to plan, all of pre-season to work with the players. No Europe, and still took them a long time. And the players, another round of signings, another round of... Yeah. So it doesn't... And you're talking about, these are top people. And it just takes time to stabilise things. But in the meantime, if people have got an opinion of you that you're too nice, or you're not good enough, or you're just a Brighton coach and all this sort of stuff, it's like, then you get written off pretty quickly. And like I said, I just have to deal with that. So, it's 31 matches and 2 blocks of 14 games and 17 games, defeats. I sort of know all the defeats. I've got them in my head. But like I said, in the end, you just have to accept that it probably wasn't the right time for me there. It's a great club. I obviously wish it well, and I hope they succeed. Of course I do, because they gave me the opportunity to work there, and I've got a lot of friends from there. And like I said, I left, I think, on good terms. I didn't. Like I said, if I thought I'd lost the dressing room, if I thought I'd lost the people at Cobham, I would be saying, yeah, okay. Yeah. But I didn't. I think after the Spurs game, there was a bit of concerns there. And then we won 3, beat Dortmund. So at that point, you think, well, we're still in the Champions League. I sort of thought to myself, well, because that competition is that competition, you never know, But then the draw came, and we had to beat Bayern Munich, and we had to beat City, and they just probably thought, well, that ain't going to happen. So out you go. And as a coach, to not be given the Real Madrid games in the Champions League, in the last state of the Champions League, to play at the stadium, it's like, okay, that's a tough one. But it just shows that that's the brutal nature of football. If they don't think you're the right person, you're out. And but that hurt a little bit. I must admit,
a little bit,
a lot, of course.
Yeah.
You're still in the, like I said, when we took over in the Champions League, they were bottom. We had to qualify. We beat AC Milan home and away. Went away to Red Bull Salzburg and won. Dortmund over 2 legs. We did some things pretty good.
And the way that these conversations go at the end, does it leave any room for you to kind of fight your corner or ask for another week or say, look, at least give me the Real Madrid games, let me show you what I can do, or I feel we're turning the corner, or not?
It didn't feel like that, no. They just, as soon as they say we feel that it's untenable, it's like, well, okay. I wasn't involved in that conversation. Like I said, I'd like to think that they think back and think maybe they acted a little bit quickly, would be my... I'd like to think that, but again, I don't know. I don't know for sure. Like I said, the club had going through this process that they probably needed to go through. They wanted to change the squad around. That's a 20, 30 player turnover. To be able to get that up and running. Yeah. Pep was here for a year and it didn't win the first year. Jurgen didn't win. Mikel's still trying to win the league. Yeah. If you think that you're just going to come in, spend some money and win in the Premier League in an era where we've got the best team at Man City, the best coaches, the best environments, Pep's a genius. He's the best. But I think the club is geared towards supporting him and doing everything they can to help him be the best that he is. He still needs the club. He still needs the club's conditions to help him. And unfortunately, I didn't have the credibility. I hadn't won the Champions League.
You think that would have bought you a bit more time if you'd have come from
I think so.
Real Madrid having won the Champions League.
Because it's easy in your brain to go, Graham Potter, flipping heck. You know what I mean? Brighton coach. And that's what it was. And I think that, and like I said, they're not 100% wrong.
Yeah.
Because clearly they're not. But they're not 100% right either.
But I think it's really powerful that you can now sit here with hindsight and understand that. I mean, you've already used the phrase collateral damage, right? That you were put into a situation that probably anyone...
Well, I put myself into it.
Okay, you put yourself into a situation unknowingly at the time that almost anyone would have struggled with, right? But now you can kind of understand actually what went on and see it for what it truly was. And I'm hoping that time has also given you the chance to truly see what you were in that situation as well. So I guess the question is, with total honesty, all your cards on the table, where do you now feel if you went in again, you would operate differently? What are the biggest learnings you've taken from that period to help you in the future?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And the bit around the learning bit is, okay, will I ever go into that situation? Will that situation ever happen so I can transfer that learning to this context? And that's the bit that I've struggled with, because I'm going, what could I have done? What could I have done? And like I said, there's a Brighton game. I think to myself, tactically we're wrong there. We tried to, you tried to implement a playing style maybe that is too quickly. You need to maybe take a step back. You've got an ideal in your brain. Okay, this is where I want to get to. But you've got to take the reality of where the team is at the moment. And it's like, okay, where do you take those steps and how do you move methodologically towards that end point? And the Brighton game, we made a mistake tactically, probably went a bit too adventurous with our defensive structure and we lost the game. And then all of a sudden, trust can be a little bit harder to get because you're like, okay, you've made a mistake. And like I said, I'm pretty sure if you listen to a Pep interview, he'll say, there was this game where I made this mistake, or this game where I made this mistake, and this game where I made... And it's fine because he's Pep and he's a genius. But we all do it because it's part of life. It's part of the process of coaching. But obviously, what you can't do, you can't afford to lose people if you make too many mistakes, especially when you're fighting for your... So there was those, I think...
Did you think you did a bit?
Well, in what way?
Lose some of the players?
No, I don't think lose them, but I think that you've always got to convince. Your job is always to convince players, and sometimes winning football matches is the best way to keep everybody's belief and confidence on that path. Right. So that's the hardest bit about working in the Premier Leagues, working at that level. If the results aren't going well, how do you keep people with you, supporting you, ready to fight for it? All that stuff. And you can do it on your own, but I think you do need conditions around you as well to help you do that. So I think that's the challenge. And then when I look back, I go, the reality of it is 12 years of continual work, non-stop, which involves moving a young family from Sweden to Wales, from Wales to England. Both my parents passing away in the first season at Brighton, trying to work out, am I upset now because of the players, or because of the training, or because of the result, or because my mum and dad have just died. My mum's just lost a 7-year battle with dementia, and you witness all that, and then 6 months after that, my dad's gone with cancer quickly. It's like, okay, how do I'm processing all this correctly? My emotions and my brain is, am I using everything in the right way, the resources in the right way? So when you get to ironically, you get to Chelsea, and because I didn't give myself that chance to reflect, that pre-season planning bit, okay, what does this team look like, and what's this going to look, and how can what signings can we make to give yourself a chance to think? Because I chose not to, and that's on me. Then you end up in this overload situation, which is super challenging, with the least chance to succeed, I think, I could give myself. And that's on me, and that's something that I have to, deal with. And it's part of the process and part of the learning.
And did the break give you a chance to grieve your parents? Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges you might have had, is that the relentlessness of football doesn't necessarily allow you to process that properly.
No, and I think speaking to lots of people about it, you go through stages of it, and it comes back a couple of days, and then you have nice thoughts and whatever else. And yeah, I suppose the break has given me a chance to, because was I the best version of myself when I needed to be at Chelsea? Probably because of all this stuff. Like, I think to myself now, like, I've got, loads more energy, perspective, had chance off the wheel, tried to, connect with some family, connect with friends, put the life a bit more in balance. Like, I'm a better version of myself now than I was when somebody's paying 20 million for us.
Yeah.
That's the reality of how I think. But life is life, and you make these decisions, and you have to try and do these things, and it didn't work, and it didn't happen. But definitely I feel like 100% better than what I was on that last picture that you showed me, which I think is what I needed. So people say, oh, you've been out. It's like, yeah, but it would have been a mistake for me to go straight back in. Even though my ego was wanting to go back in and wanting to, go and prove and all that stuff. I'm like, no, I need to make sure the next 10 years, the next 12 years, the next 15 years is how I want it to be.
So have you turned down jobs since?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, for different reasons. Things haven't been right. I have not been ready.
What does right look like then now for you?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the exciting bit. I've had the fortune of having a long managerial career at different levels and different countries. The Premier League with Brighton, I think, are one of the best run football clubs in the Premier League, and you have this amazing, crazy, intense experience at Chelsea. So now I'm just open to anything. I'm not shutting my doors to anything. I think I have to connect with the idea of what the club wants and what the people want at the club, and whether it aligns that, okay, my values and what I bring and the person I am is the person they want to work with. It has to be both.
And can I come back and ask you that question about values? Because I don't feel we've made reference to that 12-year journey before a lot of where we've censored this conversation, but I think your story is incredible.
Thank you.
From working at Leeds Met University and doing your masters there, to then go into Sweden and taking a 4th division team right the way through to the success that you enjoyed there. What are the values that have stayed the same on that journey? So if we'd have met you at Leeds Met then, that we'd still recognise from the person today. And the second question is, and what's different from that, from the man sat in front of us?
I think my foundation of thinking about whether this is values or not, but the foundation for me is, as a coach, you've got to try and create an environment that is appropriately challenging for the people there. That was my first attempt at defining what coaching or leadership or environment is. And part of that is, I think people need to be connected. I think you have to try and work really hard in a society that's very individual, with everyone's selfish needs, which is not a criticism, it is what it is, to try to bring them together, try and connect them so people feel part of it. There's like a family feel. But at the same time, we're in a performance environment, so people need to improve. They want to feel like they're getting better. So from my values, how do you do that? Well, I think you've got to be honest. I think you've got to be authentic. People need to believe, what you're saying. You have to have the tough conversations. You have to be able to give the honest feedback. When I started, I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make a difference, obviously to me and my life, but also the bit about, when I look back and I think this is the case, you look back on your deathbed, you're not looking back on games of football you've won or trophies you've won. You're looking back on the people that you love and whether you've made a difference. That's ultimately what it is, I think. And when I talk about have you, and you can only help footballers to improve. You can't improve them. All you can do is create an environment. You can only help them to improve. So once you can, and I think we lose that sometimes, and I probably lost that at times, because then you start to get caught up in your own, the team's not playing well, it's my fault. My wife used to say to me, but Graham, there are 11 players on the pitch, that they're responsible as well. And you sort of forget that sometimes. So I think people should enjoy coming to work. If you're in a football team, I think there should be an enjoyment, but there should also be a responsibility, and we create something where, I don't like the word happiness. I don't think happiness is the right word. I think it's more meaning. It's like we want to be here, and we're spending our time away from our family here. We're spending our time, this is our choice to be here. Like, how can we make this the best that we can be? Because our life is short. We're only here for a short period of time. Why don't let's make it the best thing that we can do? And that's, I think that was something I tried at Chelsea. It was something I tried at Brighton. It was something I was in my coach at university. I think it's something I believe in going forward as well. So, but the challenge is, the higher you go, it's less about developing and learning. It's more about winning. You have to understand that. So that has to always be the thing. It's all about performance. It's all about what you do and the results you get. But then you should never lose sight of, though, that results business is about a result of someone's knowledge, skills, ability to learn, plus minus their brain.
Yep.
Because you can have the best talent in the world, but the team isn't functioning for whatever reason. Often that's a psychological problem, and that's where you can do your work as a coach, I think.
What would you say has been the biggest psychological tool that you've used that's made the biggest difference into a player?
I would think I think self-awareness is a fantastic start point for anything.
Right.
And I think like I said, you go on these courses and people say, self-awareness, and everyone's, yeah, self-awareness. But for people to actually delve deep into that and really ask yourself the questions of your why and what you're doing and what's your motivation and what makes you happy and what makes you satisfied and what you're getting triggered by and all that sort of stuff. I think if that's your start point, if that's your foundation, then there's also a natural way that the player goes, okay, I think he actually sort of cares about me here. There is once the player thinks that that's happening, they're more likely to take the feedback that I don't want to hear.
Yeah.
Because the feedback, sometimes we all want to win, and we all say, but you have to learn, and defeats are important, but the brain wants us to win because we don't want the discomfort of losing. We don't want the discomfort of failing and admitting that we don't know everything, because then you have to do some work. Then you have to go and do something. You have to go and, I don't know, try and be better and admit to yourself that you're vulnerable. Admit to yourself that you're not at the moment as good as you'd like to be. And you have to go on this journey of suffering and discomfort to push yourself to improve. Otherwise, what's the alternative is, I'm great, I've got all the answers, I know everything, I'm not going to do anything, and I'm just going to stay where I am.
I've loved this conversation, because I think to have a really open chat with someone about the importance of empathy and understanding and personal connection when they work in football is important. I mean, the very fact that when Chelsea let you go, one of their issues was you were spending too much time looking after the players, right? What was the phrase they used?
I think it was almost like overly supportive of them. I can't remember what it was.
I mean, how any business, whether it's a sporting business or not, thinks that being overly supportive of people is a negative, right? Is a good indicator of a culture. And I love the fact that you haven't lost that, but you've kind of also, you now really understand that winning is also vital. So my final question before we move on to the quick fires is whether there's any fear that you have that what happened at Chelsea dominates people's thoughts, rather than the decade plus of brilliant work that you managed to do before that. And actually the world needs to see that you're better for Chelsea, not worse for Chelsea.
And I mean, there's always going to be that. Yeah. There's always going to be a chance that people, write you off. That's just normal. Like, I'm pretty sure they wrote Eddie off after he left Bournemouth, and they wrote Unai Emery off after he left Arsenal or whatever. I don't think you can worry about. I can't worry about that. It's people. I think my ex-chairman said, and he was being a bit obtuse, but he said, "There's no point arguing with stupid people because they're stupid. There's no point arguing with them." and like I said, and they're I'm not sitting here thinking I'm perfect and it's perfect, whatever else. I'm really proud of the journey I've had. Ultimately, football, probably there's 3 categories of coaches. There's the winner, there's the proven winner, which, you know, my 3 promotions and my Swedish Cup isn't going to put me in that category of winner. Or there's the one that hasn't failed yet, the shiny new one that the club wants, that the club, you know, I want to be the next, I'll hire the next Pep, you're the sporting director, you want to hire the next, you know, big coach. And then you've got these coaches that have, you know, that have failed, that have had the mistakes, that have had the setbacks and have come and have used it positively and have used it to, you know, be better. And hopefully there's still a market for that type of coach. I'd like to, it'd be sad if there wasn't, because ultimately I think that's what high performance is about. It's about being able to get up off the floor and keep going again and learn and adapt, and to take the suffering and to take the consequences and to take everything else and go, right, come on, I'm better for it.
Yeah, and there absolutely is. I mean, you were recently linked with the England manager's job, right? You wouldn't be linked with that job if there wasn't an understanding that you're a great manager of people as well as of football matches.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, you can't control speculation and all these sorts of stuff, and you link with this, you link with that, and I've realised that there's a lot in the newspapers that you don't necessarily believe too much. But yeah, like I said, I'm just really proud of the sort of route that I've taken, the career that I've had. I said it's not easy to go from the 4th tier in Swedish football to the last 8 in the Champions League with Chelsea. So I'm proud of that, but like I said, it's a continual process. It's just I'm not perfect. I'll make mistakes. I'll try and improve and get better. And that has been my approach since day one. And I'd like to think it's still the same mindset.
Brilliant. Before we do our quick fire questions, you said right at the very beginning that after leaving Chelsea, you worked with someone on the psychological side, a therapist, and you have done for a long time. What was the thing they said to you in the low point after leaving Chelsea that switched on the lights and really helped you, that might be valuable for people watching this?
Well, that it's okay to feel like you're feeling. Because sometimes you can beat yourself up for feeling that, you know, you can beat yourself up. Why can't I get past this? Why can't I just let this go? Why can't I just get through it? Why am I still holding on to this? Like, you know, you're getting stuck and this is not helpful.
Yeah.
And you've almost got to be a bit kinder to yourself. I go, it's just natural, it's just normal. It's part of the process of getting through it. To be a bit kinder to yourself, to be less critical, to try to put things into perspective, but to always, like I said, try to think about the things that you could have done better, but with a kinder view rather than a self-destructive, critical voice. To try and go, well, it's just human. We're just human beings, and these are normal thoughts. These are normal behaviours. This is a normal process. Take it for what it is. Your thoughts aren't, and that's probably the other bit, the thoughts aren't necessarily true, you know, in your brain.
Yeah.
So to really think about them and to question them and to not just accept them for what they, you know, told you should have done this, and this is bad and you're not good enough and this is your mistake and this is I can't believe you did that. It's like, well, they're only thoughts. Just to take a break from the thought and the reality to try to question whether what is going on in your brain is the truth, and to take some time to question that. I think that's helpful.
Brilliant. Right. Are you ready for some quick fire questions?
As I'll ever be.
What are the 3 non-negotiable behaviours that really matter to you?
Honesty, authenticity, the ability to endure.
What advice would you give to a teenage Graham growing up in Solihull?
That it will be all right.
If you could go back to one moment in your life, where would you go and why?
I don't think I'd really want to go back, because I'm happy with my life and I'm very, very grateful for my life. But if I was going to go back, I'd go back to a period where my mum and dad were alive and healthy, for the obvious reasons, to thank them and to tell them I love them.
What's the single best piece of advice you've ever received, and why?
It was from Tony Pulis, and he said, make sure you look after yourself, because nobody else will. And I think what he meant by that was self-care. Look after yourself, go to the gym, eat well, sleep well, And I think that's a really good piece of advice. Self-care.
What's your biggest strength? What's your greatest weakness?
Maybe my biggest strength would be, I think, empathy. I think I've got a sort of a strong feeling for that. And maybe that could be my weakness, because you're sensitive to other people a bit too much sometimes. But I think empathy would be my strength.
I think it's only a weakness if it turns you into a people pleaser.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not so that maybe not. I mean, empathy is a strength, definitely. I think the fact that you have empathy, the fact that you can understand and feel for what other people are feeling, it can be emotionally harder, because it's easy to just not care, and sometimes you do care, and you got to really watch that, because it doesn't want to be unhelpful.
Yeah.
So I still stick with those two type of answers.
Great.
And the final question: what's your one golden rule for living a high performance life?
Be kind to yourself. Accept that you're not going to be perfect, and try to find something that is meaningful, that is worth the sacrifice, and then just try your best.
Brilliant. Look, thank you so much for coming and chatting to us.
No, thank you.
It was a brilliant conversation, and I think I honestly get this real overwhelming sense from you that you are like ready to go again. I mean, you look brilliant, you look healthy, glowing and happy. And I think sometimes if someone's only seen one side of the coin, the side of success, right, we assume that person is best equipped for everything. But I think seeing the flip side of that, going into that perfect storm at Chelsea, being given a nigh on impossible task, and then sort of getting thrown out the other side, without question leaves you as a better football person, but more than that, a better person, I'm sure. And we all wish you the very best of luck.
Thanks, Graham.
Thank you.
It's brilliant. Thanks a lot, Graham.
Thank you. Thank you.
We got the picture of when you were doing Swan Lake
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, that was mad.
Yeah, but like, what was the purpose behind doing things like that?
So it was the chairman's idea, and essentially we spoke about like developing people, and football talks about we want to develop not just a footballer but the person. It's like, well, okay, well, how do you actually mean by that? What do you mean?
Yeah.
And we sort of talked about it, and it's like a lot of it was about how you can make people uncomfortable, but be comfortable in the uncomfortable situation. So that's to try to take away the fear, take away the blame, take away the hierarchy within the team. Everyone's the same. Everyone's scared. Everyone's a bit upset. Everyone's not upset, but everyone's worried about bloody doing Swan Lake in front of people, or singing, or whatever it is. So they use culture as a way that traditionally in football, it's not really football, and culture is the close link. So it felt like it was a real outlined thing that you could do to bring the two together, to expose and to educate and to experience.
And would you still do something similar? Because I sometimes think that when, like, the higher up the ladder you go, the less people experiment, because the more concerned they are about outside perception or scrutiny. Would you still go down that road?
I'm not sure I could do. I think you have to be in a high trust environment to be able to, and have a lot of backing from stakeholders to be able to do something like that. But I think the thing around being uncomfortable and also comfortable in uncomfortable situations, for lads, Premier League players, to actually speak in front of their peers, to talk, that's uncomfortable for them.
Yeah.
So if you can encourage that, if you can develop that, so we did stuff like you get lads to tell the story. Like what would you people that you love think about the fact that you're here? Well, that type of stuff, and have those conversations, and bring some photos that are important to you together and discuss them. And so then you're in little groups of 3 or 4 or 5, and all of a sudden, and then present it back to the players. And also you can feel people getting nervous and and it's the same thing, but it's just it's not Swan Lake, but they're still uncomfortable. You're still having to.
And what was the reaction in, like, the Swedish media when you were doing that?
There was a mix. I mean, when we started it, we were in the Super Ret, which is the second tier, and we weren't doing so well. So people are initially going, maybe it's because you're dicking around doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's the reason why you're not winning. You just lost a Degerfors. What are you wasting your time rehearsing for a play? Shouldn't you be training? Which is the obvious questions you're going to get. And then, you have to explain the why, and you have to explain why you're doing it. And I was the mouthpiece for it, and the chairman sort of supported me well as well. In fairness, in terms of he was articulating it. This is part of us. This is part of our. How can we create our own identity? How can we create a reason for these players to come up to the northern part of Sweden? How can that? This is part of it. And then along the way we had results and we sold some players, and all of a sudden there was a story developing and a narrative developing that was actually, this is different and this is good and this is part of who they are and this is interesting. For the media it was great because they've got something to write about. And in the end it was just like everyone was just amazed by it all and really positive, because we did a concert in front of 3,000 people singing. I had to open the concert. Yeah, I opened the concert a cappella. It was a Jämtland national anthem in Jämtska, and I had to sing it. It was
how'd you sing it?
Terrible.
But we spoke with Sia Khaleesi. We did an episode with him a long time ago, and he spoke a similar thing about showing photos and sharing stories.
Yeah.
And Damian was just like, so, and what's the impact? And he said, well, the impact is in the 78th minute of a Rugby World Cup final, when you're 2 points down and you look to the left, you don't see your teammate, you see your brother.
Exactly.
And you'll do anything for your brother.
Yeah.
Well, he told that lovely story. Do you know the story about it?
No.
So they did it, the South African, the Springboks, and he said they all presented the photos, and there was one player that brought in all photos of himself on holiday, and they thought he was trying to subvert it and make fun of the process. But when they actually went, go on then, if that's what you're going to do, you're going to make fun of it. And he stood up and he went, I'm an orphan, not got a mum and dad, not got brothers or sisters. So the photos of who I represent, and Khaleesi said to us, he said, we won the World Cup that day. I knew we were going to win it because we went from being teammates to brothers.
Yeah.
Because this guy's made himself so vulnerable that the group just coalesced around him.
Yeah, we and it's that connection. It's that how you can bring people together on a human level, acknowledging how competitive it is and what the world we're in is. In Sweden, we did before the Swedish Cup final. I got all the parents of the players to write a letter. I wrote a letter to the parents to say, thank you, son and blah blah has contributed, or daughter's contributed. It'd be quite nice if you could write something back to them just to explain how much how proud you are of them and what they've achieved and all that sort of stuff, because what they're doing now is really special and we're really grateful. And then all the letters came in. It was just like this powerful moment. That they came, they're opening the letters and they're reading a letter from their parents that is about how much they love them and how much they how proud they are and what they've achieved and all this sort of stuff. And it was almost like
But can I ask you,
do you think it made a difference?
When did you do?
We won the game, and who knows? It's just another part of something. Sure. I just thought that was really important. There's the result that we want to get, but there's an opportunity here to do something that was really quite special.
Yeah,
But when did you reveal the letters? And I'll tell you the reason I ask is because when we interviewed Stephen Gerrard, he spoke about how Brendan Rodgers had shown, I think it was a video from his parents to him, and he said he did it on that famous Chelsea game where he slipped.
Right.
And he connected the two and went, I don't know if I was overstimulated, I was too over-emotional.
Yeah.
So when did you reveal the letters?
Yeah, it was because I thought about that. I thought there's no way you can do this on the day of the game.
Right.
You got to almost like give them, this is it wasn't a performance trick. It was a genuine attempt to say, we're really grateful of this and this has been really important, and this is an opportunity just to get something that I don't think you get again. I never got a letter from my mum and dad telling me stuff. Yeah. So it was like the day before, and it just set the tone for everything, and it was just. And
did they read them out to the group, or
no, they kept it private.
So it's private.
It's just for them. Yeah. For them. It's just for them.
Well done.
I remember doing something. I worked in rugby league for a long time, and when we got to a cup final at Wembley, we gave the players a teammate that they had to write a letter of just why I'm really glad you're in the dressing room with me.
Yeah.
And again, we slipped it under the door the night before. And what always fascinates me was there was guys that you wouldn't have expected. You could see them have a look at it in the kit bag at Wembley. And I remember thinking that nobody spoke about it publicly, but lovely. The idea of it came from that Ferguson idea of where he used to say to players, you should be able to look either side and be glad that guy sat next to you is sat next to you.
Yeah.
So how do you almost articulate it?
Exactly. Yeah.
I love the parent idea though.
Yeah, it was good.
Struggling to find the motivation? Try this instead.
take it professionally, not personally.
Why are we postponing love and community and friendship?
I'm not worried if anyone fails, as long as we are changing things for the good.
To have those kinds of friendships, I think, are absolutely essential to being what we would call a high-performance human being.
Take back control over your happiness. Give the High Performance app a try. Then see how you feel.